In this lecture, we're going to look at Billy-Ray Belcourt's, and forgive my heavy Anglo pronunciation of his surname. And we're looking at his poem called Sacred. We'll start with the poem, we'll look at technical aspects, and then because this is circulating around your first assignment, we're going to look at the characters studied in this poem. Just a moment. So just to reiterate, the objectives of this lecture are the poem, some technical aspects of the poem, and the characters studied in the poem. So the poem is a prose poem called Sacred. A native man looks me in the eyes as he refuses to hold my hand during a round dance. His pupils are like bullets, and I wonder what kind of pain he's been through to not want me in this world with him any longer. I wince a little because the earth hasn't held all of me for quite some time now, and I am lonely in a way that doesn't hurt anymore. You see, a round dance is a ceremony for both grief and love, and each body joined by the flesh is encircled by the spirits of ancestors who've already left this world. I ask myself, how many of them gave up on desire because they loved their kokums more than they loved themselves? I dance with my arm hanging by my side like an appendage my body doesn't want anymore. The gap between him and I keeps getting bigger, so I fill it with the memories of native boys who couldn't be warriors because their bodies were too fragile to carry all of that anger. The ones who loved in that reckless kind of way, you know, when you surrender your body to him. And I think about the time an elder told me to be a man and to decolonize in the same breath. There are days when I want to wear nail polish more than I want to protest. But then I remember that I wasn't meant to live life here, and I paint my nails because one, it looks cute, and two, it is a protest. And even though I know I am too queer to be sacred anymore, I dance that broken circle dance because I am still waiting for hands that want to hold mine too. So you can tell just the way the poem kind of moves, there is a real speed to it. Um, and he achieves that through primarily run-on sentences. So first of all, a prose poem is just a poem where you'll notice the lines run from one side of the margin to the other, and that's why it's called prose. It's because it looks like regular prose, that kind of paragraph structure. Notice also the lack of his capitalization, the abundant use of run-on sentences. Much of this poem is technically what Kevin Clark was telling us or discussing or describing as a talking poem, in that it is has a very conversational flow, almost like he's just telling us, this is what I did last weekend. And yet the poem also has these really strong moments of poetic wording and profound thought. So also you'll notice he's breaking one of Christian Book's 10 rules. He uses a simile. A native man looks me in the eyes as he refuses to hold my hand during a round dance. His pupils are like bullets. So that is a simile. And Christian Book is adamantly against similes. I actually really like this one. I think it's very beautiful. Also know the repetition of sound, assonance, consonants, alliteration, all of that's there, but isn't as apparent to our ear as other poems assigned, particularly if you look at Rebecca Fredrickson's Cat Skinner, which is an incredibly rich poem of poetic sounds, alliteration, assonance, consonants. Notice that sounds stand out here in that second stanza. I think just due to the sheer amount of the repetition of that sound and their close proximity. You see a round dance as a ceremony. Your sea dance ceremony, circled spirits. So it stands out, still not as much as we see it standing out in, like, for example, Cat Skinner. So consider, like, for your own notes about this or your own thinking, you might consider the beginning and the closing stanzas. There's a lot of doubling or mirroring effects within this piece. For example, this section that I've highlighted, Where does this highlighted section appear in the first stanza, or the concept of it, if not the exact words, but this concept? Consider traditional Cree communities um, being twin-spirited. LBGTQ was essentially a non-issue, but we're seeing that as the Cree community, Billy-Ray is Cree. You're seeing that as the Cree communities have moved further away from their own traditional belief system, they have, in the case of this character in this poem, he's adopted um, kind of attitudes that are outside of what would have traditionally been um, a behavior in Cree community. And also consider, what does the end of the poem do? Like, what does it do for you, or what does it do in the work overall? Now, it's really important that I do not provide all the answers for you. I think it's, and mostly because I don't necessarily think my answers are the only answers, or even when it comes to studying poetry, I often don't even know if there is a correct answer. So, but I also don't want you floundering around wondering what exactly I'm trying to get at. Um, so I'll provide my take on it as we kind of move through the first several poems. So if we look at the beginning and the closing stanzas, there is called, the poem is about a round dance, and there's also a circling effect. It ends where it begins, which I think is also quite interesting. And that's a doubling or a mirroring. That he mentions about 3 times at least within the first and the final stanzas, that he feels as if he isn't ready or doesn't belong here, which is quite evocative and um, profound, and but is left unanswered. It's just kind of dropped in there. And also the character of the man that won't hold his hand, um, when traditionally the Cree people would not have had a bias based upon someone's preference towards gender or sexuality. That was a non kind of issue. It was really irrelevant, and almost traditionally it would have been like, and this is like, the word I can think of is like rude. It would have been rude to comment upon it, or to ask someone about it. So that there's this in a lot of First Nations communities, certainly the ones I am a part of, and the Métis, um, there is an idea of privacy, that and the respect of that. So to me, it's quite interesting that this man is reacting so strongly to what he's reading, and I mean that as reading the appearance of Billy-Ray. And of course, the ending of the poem pulls you back into the beginning. So, just before I start talking about character study, um, I just want to say that, and Billy-Ray doesn't mention this, but the round dance is performed by almost every First Nations people all across North America. The Plains Cree, I'm talking about the Cree my ancestry comes from, because this is the one I know. The Plains Cree hold their round dances in autumn and winter, and it's held indoors. Normally, their round dances begin at either 8 at night or 10 at night, and they last normally until 3 or 4. And they're often on an already special evening, like Boxing Day or New Year's. In the Plains Cree round dances, no drugs or alcohol are permitted. And also in the Plains Cree round dance, joining hands signifies equality. So I found it really interesting that the character would not hold the speaker's hand, which is a way of saying that they are not equal. You might also think about, like, if we think of this as a character study, um, what is revealed about these unnamed characters, the man that will not hold the speaker's hand as well as the speaker. Um, who do you think this is a character study of? Of course, it can be of both of them, but if I were to ask you to choose, would you choose the man that won't hold the speaker's hand or the speaker? And why? Like, why? And there's no right or wrong answer, but it makes you kind of think a little more in depth of the poem and the characters and what is revealed about them in this poem. There are three characters in the poem: the man that won't hold the speaker's hand, the speaker, and the elder. Based upon the information from the poem, the speaker doesn't harbor any ill will toward the man. And the speaker describes the man's eyes like bullets, which makes the speaker wonder what kind of pain the man has been through. In the third stanza, the speaker describes the man as a warrior with a body filled with anger, whereas he, the speaker, seems to see his own body as too fragile to carry all that anger. The speaker seems to be one of the ones who love in a reckless kind of way. I would assert that it takes immense strength to not carry anger rather than a fragility. The speaker goes on to indicate an elder once told him, just a moment. The speaker goes on to indicate an elder once told him to be a man and to decolonize in the same breath. That's just so much to undertake. The speaker says that he is too queer to be sacred anymore, and we are taken full circle when he says he dances the broken circle dance, waiting for hands to want to hold his too. There's such incredible beauty and sadness in this poem, and I think in a way, I think it can speak to everyone and anyone because in some way or another, we all feel misunderstood and alone and judged and unwanted in certain points in our lives. Um, I think that this poem is so important and so pertinent right now because it is addressing um, how do how do I say this? It's addressing those biases and stereotypes and kind of that anger that people exhibit toward anyone who's sort of, I guess, different. And so I think the poem is so important because it really indicates that the speaker isn't different. And there's so many playful aspects about him, how he wants to wear nail polish because it's cute, and also a protest. And the speaker is so interesting and so, in a manner, wise. The way he is so accepting of others and so willing to, um, I guess, just accept who they are. So I just find it, like, in a way, heartbreaking and necessary, and really, of course, beautifully done. That is our little lecture on the poem Sacred. There are, of course, so many other aspects we could discuss. I think that's a really good starting point, though, particularly when you should be working on your first assignment, a character study. Hoping to get the Seamus Heaney's lecture on the Tolland Man up shortly. And I do apologize. I'm falling behind just because my son and I have been sick. So, and I apologize, but thank you so much for just kind of being patient with me. I appreciate that. And I will see you soon.